Angel, we go ahead and start with you. You actually have some news to announce anyway that happened this week.
Oh yeah, I'm Angel, Muscogee Media. I'm the director here at Muscogee Media, and I'm the director of the first ever citizen ratified constitutionally protected free press of the United States for a tribal nation.
Okay.
This is insane. So we're pretty sure it's never been done before by anybody this way, ever. The citizens, we are from one of those comms departments. That was the genesis of our department, was a comms department. And over the years, many people pushed to do really transparent and really great information to our citizens, and we stood on their shoulders and we carried that narrative further and further until we just had our citizens reach out and pluck their sovereignty and their voice out and put it into their own constitution. And it's just an amazing thing. I think we made a documentary about it too. So that's great. I don't know if I should say that right now, so I'm just gonna shut up. I'm just too excited, and it's just a wonderful thing. My team has seen every possible scenario that you could ever dream up that would ever happen in a newsroom that's funded by the government, and whatever situations arise when the people who are elected to office don't really like the information that you put out. We've lived through it. And they survived it. They've worked on policy with lawmakers, and our whole entire tribe came together. A lot of people put hands on this, and it's going to change. It's going to change the scope of our government and how it interacts with the rest of the world for the better. And I'm just so blessed, and just I want to extend a huge thank you everybody here who's been helping us carry this narrative forward and reaching out for us. It's just been tremendous. To see those numbers come in, we needed 2/3 and we got 3/4. We have a higher approval rating than any politician that's ever came through an election, so it's really great.
And
Rob, you mind if I jump in here?
Go ahead and let him jump in. Just one quick thing. Wanted to say, if Maggie and everybody with the tribes, if we can help, let us know how we can help facilitate training and best practices. Thank you. Go ahead, Sterling.
Yeah, well, that was obviously the top story and what I was going to get into. Angel, you're talking about, the current impact, but you mind giving folks just a brief background of the Rough Road and how we got here? By the way, I'm former department leader, so I handed off this effort to her. I'm currently with NAJA. I'm membership manager, where I've helped assist from that point.
Yeah, I kind of had a weird and long history with this department. I started back in 2008 as a reporter for a tribal newspaper, and it was pretty standard. It was your service information, deadlines for programs and things like that. And something kismet happened when that group of kids came together, that generation of us. We had an administration that was very supportive and cut us loose with journalism experience, recognized that in us. And he said, Chief Ellis said, go out there and do the news, whether it's about me or anybody else, go do it and do it right. And so we kind of did. I promptly got fired. Oops, people weren't ready for that. When I put my first cuffin stuff on the front page, it was a fiasco. I won an award and went home and tried to figure out how to pay my bills. 7 years later, I came back. Sterling is director at Muscogee Media, had a really wonderful editor who gelled a really hardcore newsroom together. And this tribe had no idea in 2015, when they passed a code for free press, that they were cutting loose some really sharp people with a lot of chops. And the government
we did
yeah.
ahead of time, fair warning, but proceed.
Yeah, so there was a lot of people in this newsroom who had the chops to do it, and they started asking really hard questions of this government. And this government was going through McGirt, basically, is what was happening. And some of the news that we were putting out was getting quoted in the state's briefs against the tribe. So along comes 2018, and this is going to look like, oh, this information getting out about our government is hurting and impacting the narrative that the tribe is working with in the Supreme Court, and they just shut us down. They repealed our free press law.
As if why free press really helped the case, I'm sure. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, early on when it was climbing the courts, our team was out there asking the tribal leaders what this meant. Like, what will it mean? What are you doing to prepare? What are you going to do when you are responsible for justice in Indian country? And we were asking those questions 2 years before this ever happened. And we were getting mixed answers. And the reason we were getting mixed answers because the tribal comms team hadn't did a strategic, communication plan. It was evident that we were watching this come through the courts, and some of our people were even disagreeing internally about how this should be handled. The chief of police was saying, oh my God, we need to hire police officer stat. And the chief was saying, it's no big deal. We're going to wait and watch. We can't comment on a pending court case. And so it looked weird to the citizens, and the citizens were asking questions. We were elevating their questions to people, and that became a big part of our free press journey. And we just seen days before the election, the former chief actually admitted that McGirt was the entire reason why they repealed. He put a statement out on social 2 days before the polls opened saying, yeah, I censored them. I put them under the responsibility of my cabinet, and I am glad I did it. I did it for sovereignty. So,
yeah, Angel, you mind if I jump in?
Go for it.
I need to pitch to Travis too here in a second, but yes, he specifically said that because our coverage showed up in opposition briefs, but remember, this was a voluntary source out of the tribal police department that's supposed to be independent. He voluntarily gave us that statement. His words showed up in that brief. We just reported, shoot the messenger, right? So we have Travis Snell, assistant editor with the Cherokee Phoenix. He was on the first iteration proper of the Muscogee Media Editorial Board. He's now on the editorial board again. Hello, Travis. How are you doing?
Hello. Good.
It's been a while.
Yeah,
Give us your thoughts on the constitutional amendment, and then just jump right into a history of free press at the Phoenix.
I'm glad that it passed, and it passed overwhelmingly. What was it, 76%?
Yeah, a little over. Yeah.
I was on like you said, I was on the board last time when it was when the law was overturned. Went down there thinking, no way in hell that's going to happen. It's political suicide. Get down there, and it did. And just like that, free press was gone. The board was dissolved. And then thankfully they brought it back. I believe it was last year.
Right.
And then here it is a year later, and they get a constitutional amendment put in. So congrats to the Muscogee media.
Hey, Wado, for your help. Standing by.
He's really right about that political suicide. The guy who sponsored the repeal legislation just got voted out of office this weekend.
Yeah, I was going to.
Four terms.
I was going to ask about that, Angel, whether you thought that was a major factor in Mr. Jones's defeat.
We watched how our legislators were taking the topic of free press every 2 years, and it came up as a platform for people running, but we've seen very little actual progress. And so when it came election time again, we utilized that time and that pressure and flipped the script for them and put them over the barrel. All right, you've been elected. You tell us what you're doing to make good on these promises. And when we had them all going into this election year as incumbents, they unanimously supported a ballot initiative to let the citizens decide this. We had Mark Randolph, who sponsored that legislation, brought it to the floor, and we had 15 council people who couldn't on the record go, God, no, I don't think the people are smart enough to decide for themselves what they want as their own right.
The second time, though, they did vote it down the first. It didn't get the two-thirds majority to get on the ballot. So we said they think you shouldn't be able to vote on your own constitution. And that was pretty much our strategy from the jump. The repeal was rough. I quit my job, but I saw as them pitching us a law up, and then just resigned and said, shoot, I mean, how do you recover from that PR wise, repealing free press? I got to go back to Travis though. Travis, do you want us to give us a history of free press at the Phoenix?
Well, I arrived at the Phoenix as a reporter in November 2000. And it was already here. I believe it passed August of that year. Under former Principal Chief Chad Smith. I think he's the one that introduced it. And then from there, we added I think 8 or 9 years later, we added the Freedom of Information Act. And then a few years after that, our current Principal Chief, Chuck Hoskin Jr., introduced a SHIELD Act. and that was passed. And so we're operating under those three right now. So
excellent. It was really consolidated. Impressive. All right. So from here, we're going to go for NAJA's essential elements of tribal free press to give you guys a little bit more detail about what we're talking here. Like, the main thing to remember is that our departments technically sit under the sovereign and fiscal umbrellas of the tribe. So we talk about an editorial board and the need for laws. This is what we're kind of getting into technically. And we're going to try and be as detailed and clear as possible and get through as many of these as we can. So Travis, you're up first. I'm going to read this. Declaration of Protected Free Speech and Freedom of the Press. Specific language protecting a citizen's right to free speech, free press should be in the tribal constitution. The lack of these protected rights could undermine any law or policy established to protect a free press. So you have codified protections. Can you just tell us the importance of at least having a codified law, if not elevating to constitutional?
Yeah, we have codified law, and as far as I know, there hasn't been any discussion regarding constitutional amendment, but we've never had anyone come up, a legislator, anybody come up and say, you know, maybe we should get rid of the Phoenix, the free press. That's why I thought it was political suicide 2 years ago when I went to the Muscogee media meeting, or the tribal council meeting, Muscogee Creek Nation council meeting, thinking no way it's going to pass to get rid of the free press, and then it did. Yeah, I think any tribe that has a free press and constitutional amendment obviously would strengthen that. But the free press definitely should reach out to just about every tribe with a communications department or a newspaper or any type of media. So.
All right. Yes, we did a lot of good work under codified protections. It's just this elevated level kind of gives us some longevity given what Travis just mentioned. Repeal of free press and introduction of the law on the same day. Angel, you have any follow-up comments? Microphone.
We were the only tribe, I guess, that was wild and crazy enough to do a repeal on it. You know, we've seen that the standard pretty much is like law is law. But at Creek Nation, we're kind of notorious sometimes for, we seen that this doesn't work and we just will go in and like ratify law just to make things like, I mean, we tossed out freedmen of our tribe, you know, all kinds of things like this are prevalent at the Muscogee Creek Nation. And I think that it's important to understand that these are emerging democracies. Our newspaper is actually older than our Constitution here. That's just a fact, pretty much. So when you have that kind of emerging democracy, you look at that, and so in 1978 is when this Constitution was adopted by citizens, and here we are, you know, several years out, like we're making amendments for free press and basic rights, but this is progress. This is a community and culturally led paradigm shift is what it is, because when you dissect the different components of our community and understand that the different things and oppression and things that they've dealt with, it's even more impressive to see that it's emerging as that citizen-led initiative, because people are just kind of owning their rights and their voice and reaching back out and saying, you know, we've talked about how these practices were from the federal government were not cool with us. Why on earth would we allow our own government to function within that same scope? And so that's what makes it very unique when the Muscogee Creek Nation or any tribal nation has these citizen-led initiatives that actually define their democracy further. And it keeps standing out in my mind that 3/4 of the people who vote in our tribe decided that journalism was a tool for sovereignty. When people in leadership in the past had used sovereignty as the excuse to squash journalism. And so that's really powerful statement. And we get to come out and we get to advocate for our budget now with that high approval rating, and we get to go to these leaders. I think we just kind of busted them in the chin a little bit, you know, when it comes to the chops of it, you know, like, hey, you know, don't come at me with your censorship. We had a cease and desist order. We had all kinds of things going on in this election, and it was crazy. And Hopefully, as citizens stay tuned in and as we build this foundation, we see a more informed citizenry, we see a more civic engaged citizen. We had more citizens vote on this ballot initiative than the most candidates.
Yeah, some people just showed up to just vote on free press when we were looking at the numbers. Technically speaking, to make it clear, the importance of this constitutional amendment is that if they want to make any changes, any repeals in the future, if this isn't clear yet, they have to go through this process again. And if they do initiate that, doesn't appear to be just the department versus them. They're now speaking and making moves on the citizen's voice after this passed, who are supposed to be the bosses. They say it all the time. So, the next step is establish an independent media. After you make the declaration, I'm not going to read this off because we're going to get into exactly how that happens. Angel, you're up first. I'm going to have you talking about your bosses and the importance of them. Establish an independent editorial board. An act establishing a free press should include an independent governing body with sufficient powers to set and enforce editorial and personnel policies. This editorial board will, in effect, be the publisher for the org and will hold final accountability for any activities under the auspices of the organization. I should make clear that these editorial board members have to have journalistic qualifications. One of ours has to be a lawyer. And they have to follow SBJ standards and NAJA standards. So Angel, take it from here.
Yeah, I think that we all kind of understand that checks and balances when it comes to civic government structures and stuff. And that's exactly what this editorial board serves as in this independent agency role. So we're now deemed an independent agency, but we have to deal with the government. They have to approve our budgets. They have to set this board in place. So there is government interaction, but the board specifically is this umbrella kind of organization that keeps a lot of the heat off of the journalists specifically. The way our law is set up and the way it's coded out is that this newsroom operates as this independent, even internal checks and balances. So I, as the director, don't go over and tell the editor what news to do. It's absolutely it's pretty much forbidden. And that's an internal check and balance. And then we have our board above our department that serves as the buffer between us and the government. So when we come to budget avocation, hiring practices and everything, it removes the government from those practices, allows this board to go and advocate and keeping that pressure off the people doing the coverage. So my basic, function every day is just to make sure everybody in this building has the tools they need to do their job. And then there's some autonomy in the newsroom, and we have to maintain that balance. So, and that's the most critical element when you're dealing with the government funding, right? Like we have to answer to them. They have to approve our budget. There is instances where in-reach can happen, but setting up these different buffers helps keep it from being as bad as it could be, right? And
right.
Depending on the person you have,
I keep forgetting our constitutional amendment has mandated funding, which was the other big concern.
Yeah. So not only are we free of political influence, we shall be funded. So these are really good things that we can kind of, solidify that foundation we stand on when we go to bat for the money, when we go to bat for policy or anything that we need to kind of help set us up as an operating arm of government, but also an independent newsroom.
Right.
Everything's built to insulate that newsroom.
I'm going to pitch to Travis. You have follow-up thoughts, and something we need to cover too is actually how they're nominated. Travis, you want to start with that and why it's important they have these qualifications and follow these standards next to that?
Just to follow up one thing, as far as being a buffer, I think the editorial board, you need qualified people to have on there so they can come up with policies and procedures that are fair and unbiased. And so you come up with policies and then you allow, in Muscogee Media's case, Angel, the director, to execute those policies, and you have to have trust in that person. So, but as far as nomination, what was your question again?
Well, just basically how it happens. So I pointed out the qualifications right and what they have to follow, and that's important because most of these seats usually are nominated by government officials, the executive branch for one, the legislative for the other, and they pick the third. Usually, in most cases, our original law actually allowed our department to pick the third to strengthen that. I believe that's not the case now, but that I think is the importance of why you pick those qualified people and they follow those standards, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, picking qualified people. I mean, here at Phoenix, we have, I think, 2 chosen by the chief's office, 2 by the council, and then those 4 pick a 5th.
Mhm.
And we've had some really qualified people here on the board. We've lost some over the years, either, just by terming out, and we've actually had a few pass away, yeah, nominations here go through the council, confirmed by the council. And I think all of them are confirmed. I have to go back and read the act, but I think all of them are confirmed by the council here. But yeah, it's definitely important to have those people qualified, because they are the ones who are proposing and passing policies that, supposed to be equitable and fair and unbiased and all that.
All right, so I'm going to have you talk about Angel and your department leaders, establishing a tenured executive once you have an editorial board. I'm not going to read this. Let's just go into it.
Yeah, having someone, I guess, guide the ship after you've set the course as a board. Angel's done a really good job. She interviewed really well. We decided to go with her because we felt we could trust her the most, and so far she hasn't let us down. I remember seeing some editorial management on her resume, so that really helped going forward with her. I just think that once the board's established and you got somebody that you need to put in to run the office, you really need that experience, because eventually, whether you like it or not, you're probably going to see some influence come in, political influence, whether it be from admin or from the council. It's going to happen, even though it's not supposed to. And you need somebody there that, will stand up to it and basically take it on the chin for the organization.
Yeah, I'm going to pitch to Angel, but you're correct. A point and something I've learned that black and white, laws are only so strong as the people that are willing up to stand and defend them and make sure they're followed to the letter and to the spirit. So, Angel, you have follow-up thoughts about your job?
Absolutely. I mean, just because we have it solidified in law that we'll remain free from political influence doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I've received emails that seem kind of ominous and threatening in some way sometimes, and people imply, their stroke and their power, and remind me of that all the time. The critical thing I think that we're kind of understanding and starting to feel around right now is anything you have in text and law is only as good as what you can challenge it in court. This is something that we're probably going to discover is going to be in our next hurdle to overcome, because while we do kind of receive those pushback, and we always are conscious of the power dynamics here and how the payroll flows, we have to often rely on the government processes to keep everyone in line. And when it comes to like the council and how they interact with us, we haven't had much luck from like the Attorney General and representing us in those matters. So these are kind of things that we're still going to be.
I need to speak with you sometime today.
All right, thank you. We're going to continue on. Can everyone mute their microphones, please?
2 things.
John?
One is a personnel issue, and
Meltzer, there you go. All right.
All right. Sorry, Angel. We'll go ahead and move on. We have explicit declaration of an open public forum. I'm going to remind folks that this guide is on NAJA.com along with some great coverage guides if you want to read more about it and view it. But I want to move on to the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. And Angel, you're up first on that.
So we got our FOIA law, we got it passed about the same time last summer. We passed our freedom of press back when it came back into code. I'm just kind of greedy like that. You took something away from me and now I'm going to ask for double, is kind of how I saw the opportunity. I had a legislator who was listening to us on free press and, you know, working with law. And I said, by the way, FOIA would be great. And I attempted to connect the council with, you know, like our FOIA organizations to get some really good guidance. And I think that Joey Senate even offered to help, and people from the OK chapter and everything. I don't think the council ever took them up on the offer or any of their recommendations, but they had some guidance to look at. But they also passed their own version of the law. And with their law that they passed, kind of good and bad, you can request documents. We haven't successfully gotten any yet. We've submitted about 7 or 8 requests to our government. And one of the stories that we were working on was actually a great big investigation into an elected official. Our tribal government, we sent records requests to both branches of government. Neither of them fulfilled them. So we just went to looking at the program that this councilman was alleged to have misused. And it was a federal program. So we submitted our FOIA to the federal government and we got everything we possibly wanted, and we broke that story, and hugely impactful. The great thing about it is that we got a law on the books. The bad thing about it is we haven't challenged it yet in the court setting. And until we do that, we just don't know what it will do. But it needs to happen, and it's probably going to have to happen quickly because until we get some teeth or some ruling on it, our government is going to keep determining what is public information for us, and we'll never turn over documents, basically, is kind of how it's going.
Sure. And I think this came up in the training just a few days ago about looking for data, which is at what point do you just say we're getting stonewalled on our FOIA and just go to print, right? But Travis, you probably have had the FOIA the longest than anyone in any country. Someone will have to fact check me on that. You want to give us some insight as to, you spoke about your law a little bit. You want to elaborate?
Yeah, our FOIA, we first had it, I think around, I want to say 2008, somewhere along in there. And it was, that first version was a little stronger than the one that they came back and revised around, I think 2013, 2014. First one, anybody could FOIA for Cherokee Nation and Cherokee Nation business information. Now it's citizens only, tribal citizens only. And then some of the, I guess they've tightened down on what is considered public. They were concerned about business practices getting leaked to other tribes and stuff like that. So it's a little harder to get some of CMB's documents just because it's proprietary information now, which I can understand some of that. Some of it I disagreed with, but and then they've lengthened the days on how long it takes for the FOIA to be responded to, or I guess answered. It was pretty quick originally. Now they have 20 days, and then they can extend that out to 30 if they want to. So some good, some bad, but you know, we still use it. It's helped us break some good stories here. Helped us with the housing authority story back in, I can't remember what year it was, but we got a lot of documents from the housing authority, or got some documents from the housing authority, and I think we won a course award for that, but I can't remember. But anyway, yeah.
All right. Yeah, and those largely follow rules that you see in our public meeting laws for executive session, you know, personnel, proprietary business. that stuff is understandable, but when you first see it, you have to be like, okay, is this really in the spirit of what this is supposed to be? Would this actually cause harm to the tribe based on my understanding? So if they put that, it's not wise to take it on its face, but I think in my experience, do a deeper analysis about the denial and kind of go from there. So we're going to move on and stay on you. You also mentioned the SHIELD Act that you passed. Both of you have one, I believe, at your tribes. Travis, you want to start with the importance and what it means?
Well, yeah, I mean, the SHIELD Act basically, our SHIELD Act basically shields us from having to turn over any documents or any sources or that pertain to stories. I mean, there are limits to it, but our current chief, I think when he was on council, helped get that passed, so appreciated that. The good thing is that we've never actually had to use it. I don't ever remember anybody ever coming up to us saying, give us this source or give us these documents or give us this information that you use for the story, or, you know, want to sue or whatever. So that's the good thing about it, is that we've never actually had to use it. It's nice to know that it's there in case we do need it. But thankfully we haven't had to use it yet.
Wonderful. And before I pitch to you, Angela, one thing I found that was really great about having a SHIELD law when I was at Muscogee Media is, in one of our big stories, we had to use an anonymous source, and the SHIELD law actually says if there's an event of like libel or slander, they can press for that in court under certain circumstances, but that's actually empowering and I think adds credibility. If you choose to use an anonymous source in a story, you can say, well, if I'm lying, you can take me to court. Angel, you want to talk about the SHIELD law further?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't used it under my time here, and I don't think that we've printed an anonymous source since I've been back. But like, it's definitely an advantage, and we definitely have the perfect scenarios that, you know, our citizens come to us with tips or news or information, and they worry about, you know, how it will impact them to cooperate with us, and it's nice to offer them that protection. Also, I mean, I'm sitting in a building that has government cameras in it, so I don't encourage any whistleblowers to come into my office at all, ever. But, you know, and these are things that we're going to have to sort out in the future, but it's nice to offer it. And there's even going to, I anticipate in the future that, like, as the climate, you know, unfolds for us, you know, we have a lot of folks who are, you know, very verbal in their attacks against the media and want to associate us with different things. And I think that it's something that we'll definitely, you know, be glad that we have when the time comes to use it. But for now, it's something that we haven't really used a lot. And I wanted to kind of remind folks too, with the tribal FOIA, many of these tribal FOIA laws are hinged upon you must be a citizen to request. But for the purposes of a journalist and people in this group, I would encourage everyone to team up and collaborate on these stories, because it can mean the big difference in getting the information. I can request documents as a citizen of the Muscogee Nation. We can work on a story together. And anybody on my staff can do the same, you know, like that kind of scenario can play out. And I think that that will be a valuable thing in the future when it comes to holding some accountability in these stories, because we have watched how important it is to collaborate with outside of tribal media to get information out. There are information deserts, and we need to get the information out to people. Trust has done like this amazing election coverage of our election, and like people were just buzzing about it. They were like, holy smoke, who is this other news organization that's paying attention to tribal elections? Because I don't think it's been done that in depth before, and we like just pitched over our coverage and was like, use whatever you need. And so that
I agree 100%. And I'll tell folks, we wouldn't have gotten the first free press law without outside media. And part of that was just compare and contrast. Our citizens are reading the world, they're reading our stuff. Why are these things coming out late? Why aren't they coming out at all? Why is a seemingly top story on page 2? And then after the repeal, of course, coverage was critical, couldn't have gotten it done. So to repay the favor and press on and honestly collaborate, and we need your help on some of these big pieces, man, the more inquiries, the better. So we're getting down on time. So we're just going to do 1 and 1 on 2 more of these things on the guide. Angel, you mentioned cameras in the building. The last one is location, location, location. Why is it important? And not only location, but I'm also going to add privacy on your phone lines and your own email server. Go.
Yes, absolutely. Right now, we're sitting on the tribal complex with cameras in our building that were installed for COVID to make sure masks were on faces. And they are like eye in the sky, I can read over my shoulder. You wouldn't believe how good these cameras are. And how do I function in a newsroom when I can't even guarantee, the safety and, privacy of my sources, right? That's freaking crazy. And one of the first things you'll look at is like, look at the Osage News. They are not on tribal campus. They got off. They are completely severed from that. And that's going to be the next steps going forward for us. We have to work on getting off campus. We have to get our own networks, and we have to make sure that our information is not accessible or able to be throttled by the government, right? Like, because that's a thing too. If we're hinged on government IT, they can throttle our bandwidth, or they can just shut us down and take over our
Or spy on you. Yes.
Yeah, or spy on us.
Travis, you want to talk about budgets and protection and the challenges of passing a budget as codified free press department? Because I've been there.
Budgets, yeah. I think it was fiscal year 2012. We had a budget that was pretty big, up around $1 million, something like that. And then the council came in during budget season and cut us by 25%. So we had to basically go from being a newspaper that provided free subscriptions for everybody to having to have people pay for the subscription, because that's that. And the council encouraged us to come up with a game plan, and that's what we came up with, and they loved it. And so, but just the fact that we had our budget cut by 25% without really any notice really scared a lot of us. So we had to scramble to figure out what we were going to do. Since then, it's built back up a little bit here and there. But yeah, there's always that threat, or not really a threat, but that possibility that, you could have your budget cut. It would be nice to have something in place that, guarantees a budget every year. Unfortunately, some tribes probably deal with that, where your media is not in line, so the media takes a hit. So it'd be nice that if more and more tribes would go the route with free press and stuff like that, but unfortunately sometimes that isn't happening. So.
And one more thing before I pitch back to Rob, though, I remember working with you guys and visiting. You're one of the best money makers in Indian country. You've tried to make up ground for that, correct?
I'm sorry, you were cutting out on me.
You've made your own revenue. You're one of the best hustlers in Indian country, right?
Yeah, we had to go from, like I said, we went from giving out free papers. Anybody who called in said we want it, to actually having to charge, and then we've actually made merchandise and stuff like that. So yeah, we make money for ourselves now.
Excellent. Rob, I'm going to pitch back to you.